The Conservative Party, once the custodian of pragmatic moderation, has long harboured a tension between its liberal and reactionary instincts. It is within this tension that Robert Jenrick has found his latest stage and indeed his moral undoing. Jenrick's recent remarks about visiting Handsworth in Birmingham are not a minor gaffe. They expose a pattern of racial essentialism, political calculation, and, well, let's face it, contempt for democratic restraint that makes him unfit for power. And let's be clear about what he said. Standing alongside and standing before his peers, Jenrick described Handsworth as close as I've come to a slum, and lamented that during 90 minutes there he didn't see another white face. He claimed to be speaking about integration, yet his language betrayed him. He equated whiteness with belonging and difference with decay. That is not the language of civic nationalism, it's the language of exclusion, it's the language of Robert Jenrick, and it is doubly dishonest, for Handsworth is an integrated community by any serious measure. British Pakistanis, Indians, Bangladeshis, Caribbeans living side by side, sending their children to the same schools, working in the same economy, contributing richly to Birmingham's civic life. Integration is not about pigmentation, it is about participation, language, shared values, and civic identity. And Jenrick knows this, or ought to, but he chose instead the easy applause of Farage's racial anxiety. What is dangerous is not simply his prejudice, but his method. He makes a claim of moral neutrality. It's not about the colour of your skin, while every sentence proves that it is. He talks about seeing no white faces because for him visibility has become the measure of virtue. He performs the very sleight of hand that modern racial populism depends upon, to insist one is only observing what others are too polite to say, while smuggling in racial hierarchy as common sense. It is wrong when it's performed by Farage or Coburn or whatever oaf from, I was going to say something so much worse there, or whatever oaf is peddled by reform in its various incarnations, UKIP, Brexit, whatever. But it's the same trope, isn't it? It's the same tray. This alone would be enough to disqualify him from serious office, or should be. But Jenrick's problem goes deeper. He has begun to entwine racial grievance with constitutional vandalism. As Shadow Justice Secretary, he has drawn up lists of judges he considers activist, threatening to sack them, abolish the Judicial Appointments Commission, and restore ministerial control over the bench. It is one thing for a politician to criticise a ruling. It is quite another to demand the purging of judges for political intent. Lord Sumption has rightly warned that Jenrick's ideas could turn Britain into a Trumpian autocracy where the law bends to the executive will. And this contempt for judicial independence sits alongside Jenrick's growing fascination with a movement called Anglo-futurism, a fringe ideology that dresses up racial nationalism in the language of technological optimism. Behind the AI-rendered rockets and Union Jacks on the moon lies something darker, the dream of a white Anglo-civilization purified of multiculturalism. One of its leading voices has openly called for a collaboration with neo-Nazis and the rehabilitation of Hitler through ironic humour. Jenrick has publicly called himself an Anglo-futurist. He cannot now plead ignorance of what that entails. And this is the pattern. A man who once posed as a centrist moderniser now flirts with the far right, weaponising nostalgia and grievance, and when cornered he claims to speak for ordinary people, to say what others are afraid to say. Quote. Yet what he really does is degrade public discourse, turning the Conservative Party, once the party of Disraeli and Heseltine, into a vehicle for resentment. It's telling that his allies rush to defend him. Kemi Badenoch calls his remarks a factual observation. Claire Cortino says that not seeing white faces means integration has failed. In this echo chamber, prejudice becomes perception and observation becomes ideology. But when politicians begin to measure the health of the nation by the hue of its inhabitants. They are no longer conservatives in any traditional sense. They are racial engineers. And let's remember the hypocrisy. Jenrick once styled himself as a one-nation conservative, a moderate voice of business and competence, yet he now attacks activist judges, praises Anglo-futurism, and speaks of slums when confronted with communities not shaped in his own image because he thinks this is the way to gain power. He will say anything to get his hands on the knob of the office door that, in this case, will give him leadership of the Conservative Party or leader of the opposition, and he hopes access to number 10. That will never happen. This shift is not conviction, it is opportunism, and he wears it like a badge. He is more shameless than Farage, dare I say that. It is the politics of a man so desperate for applause from the reactionary quarter of his party. It's not even the politics of a showman, it's certainly not the politics of a statesman. It's the politics of a clown, slapping on the makeup. The moral test of leadership is not how one treats those who agree with us, but how one speaks of those who are different. And on that test, Robert Jenrick fails abjectly. He's not merely misspoken, he's revealed a worldview incompatible with plural democracy, the rule of law and constitutional restraint. There was a time when conservatives knew the difference between firmness and fanaticism, between law and vengeance, between belonging and blood. If Jenrick's rhetoric now defines the party's future, that moral distinction collapses. So why should he never hold the levers of power? Because power in his hands would not be used to unify, but to divide. A Jenrick hand job is something to avoid. It would not defend our institutions, it would subvert them. In his hands, there wouldn't be a renewed conservatism, but a corruption beyond all recognition. If you think it's bad with Badenoch, it'll be worse with Jenrick. And in a country already struggling with cynicism and social fragmentation, we cannot afford another demagogue disguised as a moderate.